speaking of timeouts, the new the 2-minute warnings this year. Have you kind of looked at that? Have had a plan for that, and what your strategy going in, and just the into games, into halves. What will look like this year for you.
So that it's interesting with the 2-minute warning. I've talked a little bit about it, so I might be repeating myself because way different than what it is in college with the NFL rules. So we've had to get studies and research from NFL people to look at it, but I think the easiest way to put it is, so with the college timeouts at the end of half and end of game, it was like this, but now that you add the 2-minute warning, you wouldn't think it would be as big of an impact, but now it's like this. So many more scenarios can happen, and particularly in college, because see, in the NFL the clock never stops, but in college it stops in the last 2 minutes, and you add the timeout, so it's a considerable amount of time. So there's a lot of different scenarios to look at. We're actually in the process of doing it. We're redoing all of our end of half, end of game sheets, and we'll have to be prepped for those in a lot of different ways, not just offensively, but defensively as well.
Can you give kind of a synopsis of just what you thought since media day through this week, and even what you could share maybe today, what you thought?
Yeah, and with what area?
Just with the team.
Well, we're way undisciplined today. We had way too many penalties, ball on the ground too much. We got a lot of work. And we've got good players and guys that are returned and they're experienced, but we just got a lot of things we have to get cleaned up to get back to the success that we've had here for 20 years is based on discipline, one, and toughness. And I thought that we were okay today from a toughness standpoint, but our discipline wasn't very good, just too many mistakes. And that's what I shared with them today.
When you've got so many guys back, especially on offense, line, quarterback experience, receivers made plays, start running back, do you raise the bar where you think you should be at this point, and even going to the season just because of all the experience and talent, as opposed to maybe years where we got some question marks?
So the communication I have with them is where they should be based on just what you said. And that's what I said today. For the experience we have and where we're at, we had way too many mistakes from just a discipline standpoint. And that needs to improve. We'll do this again, I think maybe Tuesday, and then we'll do this again Saturday, and then obviously we have to start backing off, getting ready to play in the game. But we need to become much more disciplined, and I have communicated to them just what you said.
You worry about maybe because they know they've done it before, maybe that edge isn't quite there, they kind of think they're there when they're really not.
I don't see any passiveness with them in the way they're practicing, but I think I have mentioned what you said to them just from the standpoint of you understand that you can't just turn it on in the last week, even though you've done it for 4 years or 5 years or 6 years. So I've talked to them about that same subject.
Cameron Epps is a guy we're going to get to talk to today. And I know last year there were times that he looked like a playmaker and times he looked like a freshman. What have you seen in his development since last season? He's
developing like he should, and that's what guys do when they're freshmen. Guys that have some talent, they're going to show up and make some plays, and then there's going to be times they get confused. So much more going on at this level than high school. And at times they can hit a wall, which you've heard me mention that for years. Freshmen can hit a wall where they're just not the same. Very few players. Russell Okun could do it. Des Bryant hit a wall, but not a wall on game day. He could still do it. Very few players can go throughout an extended season when they're freshmen and then not hit that wall. But he's coming along now. He's seeing things better than what he did last year, just from an experience standpoint.
Is the safety position, you've got a lot of guys with experience back there, is kind of sorting that out one of the more complicated puzzles you've got to put together?
Well, the good news is we'll play a considerable number of guys. Is what we want to be able to get accomplished, to keep guys fresh, and we're expecting that the depth we have allows us to grow and let guys stay healthy. Some of the issues that we deal with is that if a young player plays too much in his career early, then he gets tired, and then that works against him. And right now we have some depth there, and some guys can rotate through, and that should help us.
This may be uncomfortable since you just sat down there, but I was gonna ask you about Rashad Owens, what he did last year. He stood on the podium with you in Houston as the MVP. Have you liked what he's done building off that season toward trying to even be better?
Yeah, the good news is I'm not uncomfortable with them sitting there, because I tell them the same thing face to face, so it doesn't matter to me. But Rashad he falls in the category with Ollie and Bowman and Brennan and some of the veteran guys, Corey, Walter Sheed, Nick. They have to train, practice, and have a better attitude and work harder than they ever have in their career if they want this team to win this year. And he's done that. One thing about him, he competes. When he goes on the field, he competes. When he goes on a practice field, he competes. He doesn't shy away from anything. That's the most important thing that he can do for our team.
Mike, this is we've had the portal and NIL for a couple of years now, and that still seems new, but now we got this new wave of newness. 12-team playoff, a virtual brand new conference. Are you invigorated by what's going to happen and curious? And I mean, it seems like a new landscape here late in your career.
Well, and it's going to change again. As we progress toward the NFL and players will have employment contracts, there's a whole line of things that are going to fall in place here in the next 6 to 12 months, probably 18 months. If she signs off on this settlement and it stays close to what it's supposed to be, and then they weed through Title IX, then they're gonna weed through roster numbers and different things, then there'll be some guidelines, and everything is new, and it's kind of fascinating to me now. I've kind of gotten beyond all the new stuff. Now it's fascinating for it's what's new. The issue as we move forward and get into players actually being employees, the issue will be, what do we do with the NCAA? Where do they stand? Because right now they're a non-factor. And what role will they play as we migrate toward ultimately a NFL model? Will they actually be a factor or not? That's going to be what's really interesting. That was a long answer for now. It kind of fascinates me to see what's next. Nothing surprises me anymore. We're trying to stay ahead of the game a little bit, which is difficult to do because we don't know what the parameters are yet.
But the on-field situation for this year, which is all these new schools in your conference, half the conference was not here 14 and a half months ago. 12-team play, triple the playoff, those kinds of things. Does that intrigue you? Does it excite you? What does that do?
Well, it does, and the parity is what's interesting. We have free agency now, and players are bought, players are paid, and players can move as much as they want, and that's only going to continue to get to be, I guess, more of a factor in on-the-field play. But it's interesting because we don't get to play OU this year, we don't get to play Texas. People talk all the time about not having Bedlam, but see, we had gotten used to playing Texas. I mean, that was kind of routine for us, and so, I used to look at games and say, okay, these guys are going to be really, really talented. How can we beat them somehow? How can we get out there and beat them? Because you only have to beat them once. And it's different now with the new teams and the direction things are going. It'll be interesting to see what the committee and how the committee feels about certain bubble teams in playoffs. What will push them over to get in, or what will hold them back to not get in. I think that'll be intriguing.
Is there a team on the schedule that kind of fills that? Obviously, they don't have the history of OSU, OU, or OSU, Texas. Is there a team on the schedule that kind of that you think can fill that void of players getting more excited than just a typical Saturday?
Well, I don't know that we know that yet. I know that right now South Dakota State is an issue. I've said that all along. When you play a team that hadn't lost a game in that many years, we definitely have our sights set on them and them only at this time. And after we've been in this league a couple years, we might be able to say, okay, here's a game that would fit the role of what we talked about. But I think it would be unfair to say now, because that's not something that's established in 1 year or before we even start.
Mike, you mentioned the parity and sort of the unknowns of the selection committee with the 12-team playoff. I know you obviously want to win every game, but do you still feel like, even with the expanded playoff, that maybe that window of opportunity for you or any other Big 12 team, because we haven't seen an undefeated Big 12 team, or even one loss is rare coming out of the Big 12, just how that will shake out? Do you still feel like, boy, being undefeated or one loss has almost got to be imperative for a Big 12 team in this expanded playoff?
I think when it all settles that the committee, within reason, is going to try to spread the wealth with the conferences, in my opinion. Now, if you have a team that is where teams are beating each other up, then your conference champion's automatically going to be in, correct? Then the other guys are not going to have a chance. So I think that's part of what Barry says is going to be interesting, to really see what they're looking for and how they feel about it. I do think that the Big 12 has an advantage because we play 9 conference games, and that is important. And I think that the non-conference scheduling will be a bigger factor now than what it has been in the past, which is good for us because we've scheduled really good moving forward. And I think that's going to be a bigger factor.
With all the experience that you have on this team, is it important to get some younger guys who will be here for the future, a few reps here and there throughout the year, or can you even think about that with the portal era being a thing?
Reps, meaning?
Like offensive linemen, all your guys are pretty much seniors going to graduate. Is it important to get a young guy just some game reps to kind of see what he's got?
Well, I'd love to do that. They're getting a lot of reps in practice. It's not the same. Mm-hmm. But you guys know, you've watched me forever. As soon as we get in a position, we're going to put other guys in and let them play. Okay, we don't leave guys in for statistics or to run the score up. We've never done that. We want other guys in so they can play. One, because they've earned it in practice. That's what they want to do, is play in games. Their moms and dads deserve to see them play. Okay, and the experience they get being out there in the game is very important, and that's not something we can replace.
Is that more imperative this season because, again, 6 months from now, you could be looking at a completely different team with so much seniors likely moving on? Is that
There'll be a lot of new guys, and we have, as you know, lots of veteran guys. So there'll be a lot of new guys that'll have to get work, and hopefully we can do that some. Again, I'm going to go back. There's a lot of parity now. You don't see it as much, particularly the last 3 or 4 years. For a number of years around here, we were able to do that 3 or 4 times a year, maybe 5 times a year. But with the way the games change with free agency and money, then there's not as many games like that. But yes, we would like for that to happen. If not, we have to scrimmage a lot in the spring. We've got to find a way to get those guys some live reps.
I know the reps aren't the same, but have you noticed in the last week some guys pop, besides all the depth you came in with, wow, we got another guy that can help us here. I mean, have you seen some of that?
Yeah, we've got some guys that are doing well. Some of them are, a few young guys are playing very well early, but they still don't know what they're doing. They're doing well. We're in there in a basic fundamental. If it's a big guy, when he's doing something, he's done throughout his career. If it's a back, if he's carrying the ball, he's done well. But the other side of it, the details that you have to know to play at this level, they could be lacking that. But we do have some really good young players that are coming along, and we have veteran players that are coaching our younger players, which is what we've always felt like helps our organization and builds our culture. Is our veteran guys are helping to coach them and bring them along, and that's been a positive for us lately.
On defense, you got what's Kendall Daniels looking like? I know he's going to play a little linebacker for you, I guess. How much do you think he'll do that? And also Colin Aller, I guess he's going to be linebacker still, but he'll also play more on the line.
Yeah, so there's times Kendall will play back, and there's times he'll come down. We showed some of that in the bowl game, so it's the same. Depending on what personnel the offense is using and different formations and who we're playing will determine that side of it. And then Colin will move around and play second level some. we'll walk him up, we'll bring him from depth, moving those guys around and just trying to use all the skill set that they have at this time. Most of it will depend on who we're playing.
Mike, we've asked you about coaching a team this veteran and this experience, but your offensive line in particular is crazy old and experienced. Do you coach that unit any differently because these guys are 23 and a half years old on average?
You know, we've moved much further along with those guys. And up to this point, they've had a really good camp, and I can sit back and see the maturity and experience, and I can see that group working together and being productive much earlier than in years past. I've said this, you know, for 4 years we struggled with health in the offensive line at the wide receiver spot. Now those guys are working together and doing very well. I can see it, the experience they have in communication, and I'm excited to get them to the first game and watch them because of those reasons.
Last question.
What is it about Nick Martin that allows him to be as successful as he was last year, and what does that next step look like for him?
So I said this the other day, Nick loves football. He's an old school tough guy. He would play football for free. He's changed his body, so I think he's at 222 or something now. And he's can run really fast, and he's violent, and he's willing to be relentless with his body. He doesn't care what happens to his body when he plays. In my opinion, to be a good football player, college football player, you have to disregard the health of your body to play the game. And he's willing to do that, not only in games, but in practice.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.